Pre-warning, if you do snip this to the beginning, I swear a lot, so sorry in advance for anyone. Just warning you, I swear a lot.
Yeah, we should also warn people that this is going to be a relatively long discussion, but hopefully people will be able to take some good nuggets out of it. I mean, it is my Sunday, so I got time, right? I'm not in any hurry.
I was about to do a post in the group about hyperbarics, just because like I feel there's a lot of people that just have no idea. Like no one knows anything. It's actually hilarious. And I'm like, fuck, I keep getting very simple questions that could be answered in one post, but I didn't know how to get the information across because if you send a big post, it's just an essay, no one wants to read it. You
Well,
know,
maybe we can use this video for that.
maybe we can. Who knows? We'll see. So shoot, where do we start?
Actually, I started kind of thinking about a couple things about hyperbaric. One would be maybe a little bit about ATA. And, I see 1.5 out a lot. I see 2, I see above 2. So maybe a little bit about that. Um, Different chambers, use different, I guess. Sometimes some chambers have like BIBs, sometimes they have oxygen in them, maybe a little bit about that. I think so. If we kind of start from the basics of why somebody might choose one over the other, starter at 1.5, not a good idea or good idea, things along those lines, I think it would be helpful because, I'm going to share this with a gal who's interested in hyperbaric, but I think she'd like to kind of hear, maybe pros and cons of approaching getting into hyperbaric in different ways. I know you mentioned in the text, I think is another thing, which is fire suppression and fire safety and rules and regulations in states. I've actually seen people who had a hyperbaric, maybe had a 1.5, maybe had oxygen in it. Fire department closed them down, said you can't offer that anymore. So maybe if you just have some general oversights about that kind of stuff would be real helpful.
Okay, let's start from the top. Let's start with types of chamber.
Sure.
So we've got single person. By the way, I'm looking at my TV, so I've got everything on the TV behind you, so I can see where I'm at.
Yeah,
Uh,
no worries.
for types of chamber, there's so many ways to look into this, which is really confusing and annoying because it used to be monoplace, multiplace, and then they've got now they've got multi-lock chambers as and multiplace as two different categories. Then you've got soft shells. Then you've got that used traditionally soft shell was like a weak, like a mild chamber. Now you've got soft shells that go to 2 ATA, which is, in my opinion, scary as fuck. Like I wouldn't want to go anywhere near that. Um, and actually, I've seen a photo of one. This person wrote a blog saying, "I've been using this 2 ATA chamber forever, and it's like it's perfectly fine." And the photo, like the soft shell has to have these like belt buckles all the way across the seam to hold it together, and they're shifted. So I'm looking at it going, man, that thing is like so close to exploding. I wouldn't go anywhere near it. And they're like, it's perfectly fine. It's never blown up. I'm like, oh my God, please don't. So, you've got those. You've got a mild chamber pretending to be a hard chamber just because it has a hard shell. But traditionally, hard shell chambers used to go minimum 2 ATA. Uh, so there's lots of different things, right? Um, Nowadays, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, how many seats does a chamber have? It's either one or multiple. Traditionally a multi-place used to be like a hospital chamber where they'd have 10, 20 seats, right? So it's a very, very big operation. Nowadays we have two-seaters, four-seaters, three-seaters, five-seaters. And it's kind of opened up a new category, but it's treated the same as a 10 or 20-seater. So you just have to bear that in mind. I really think that, the two-seater is the best way to start if you really want to get into things, but they're not cheap, So we'll go into that a bit more later, but I just want to quickly touch on that and just be like, you've got these different exteriors, and some of them are hard, but really should be classified as a mild chamber. I won't name names, but it's very easy to find out which one I'm talking about. It goes to 1.35 and it has hydrogen as well. I really don't like that chamber personally. A lot of people love it. I don't like the amount of airflow it has because once you're at pressure, it drops down to like 15 liters per minute, I believe. I have to check the email later. But in my old chamber was flow through, which means the air's flowing through the whole session, whereas opposed to my current chamber is a static chamber. So once it hits pressure, it's just coasting, right? It's just staying at the same pressure. Now, my old chamber had 280 liters per minute going through it. and I had one dude get the CO2 levels to a dangerous level, right? So think of it like you're blowing into a paper bag. If there's enough of a hole at the other side, you'll be blowing through. It won't keep filling up with the CO2. If the hole at the other end isn't big enough and you're not pushing through the air, it'll just build up with CO2 and you get hypercapnia. So that's why I don't like that chamber. But we'll skip on across because, by the way, how much time do you have?
Actually, it's my Sunday afternoon. I got lots of time.
Okay, okay, no
So we
worries.
can, if you want to keep it relatively short, that's totally fine too. Up to you.
I mean, I'll try to rattle off on all these things, and I guess if people want more information, we could just ask later, and we can do a second one or try to answer it in comments. Bibs are fascinating. There's a time and a place for everything. I really like bibs, but not everyone is good for it. So if you have how would you say, a really old person who's been through chemo and radiation and they're basically half dead, they might not have the lung capacity to open the valves on the system. And so they might struggle a little bit with it. Um, but bar that, I think everyone else should be using bibs.
So
Uh,
for the people who don't know anything about the term BIBs or what that is, why might that be important in a hyperbaric?
so bibs stands for built-in breathing system. Um, it's a special type of breathing mechanism. So I'm trying to adjust my head. With the bibs, you've got basically two tubes going into your mask. I don't have one here. I'm just at home at the moment. I just literally woke up. So with the bibs mask, it kind of looks like a jet fighter pilot. So you got the mask fully sealed on the face, a
Hmm.
tube going in, a tube going out. So air or oxygen, so some sort of gas is going in, and then we're exhausting out the other end. Okay. So
And is this pure oxygen or is this concentrated oxygen or what, just air or what is it?
it's whatever the hell you're connecting up to it, you know. Um, Generally, it's going to be concentrated oxygen. So it's either going to be from a concentrator or from a bottle. You can also push air through the mask, depending on the system. So some systems do that, some don't. Like the company I'm with, we do. So you literally just set up an automation, or you can manually switch it across if you want by pressing a button. But once the mask is on, the customer never has to take the mask off. So they can just press start and the session will just run, right? Whereas other companies or even the old school hospitals, you'd either have a nurse turning a toggle left and right, so air and oxygen, or they'd be walking around saying, please remove your mask, and then, put it back on again after the air break. So, yeah, like with the system, all systems are smart and most of them you can rig up any gas you want. And so if you want to do a mixed gas, I don't know why you would. Maybe you've been diving and yeah, honestly, I can't think of an application that anyone on this call would use mixed gas. So it would just either be air or concentrated oxygen. Just for context as well, um, air is 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen. So it's air is mainly nitrogen. There's not much oxygen in it. There's roughly 1% or not even of other gases as well. So generally we just ignore them when we're talking about air in this context. But if you want to get really technical, there's like argon and a whole bunch of other gases. So back to the mask with the bibs, we're feeding in a gas and we're exhausting your CO2 and water when you're breathing out. So if you have a static system, you need to have bibs. If you have a flow-through system, technically you don't need bibs. However, if it's a multi-place chamber, you need bibs. Like it's not a question. If you don't have bibs on a multi-place chamber, what will happen is the oxygen concentration in the room will get too high and it will go against the NFPA 99 guidelines. So NFPA is National Fire Protection Association, I think.
Got it.
Um, and pretty much most of the world goes by that standard. So that was set in America. Um, and there's a lot of little nuances to it. So it's worthwhile if you have the time to read it, if you really want to get into it, or just speak to consultants and see what's important. But that's just something to note. I think back to the bibs in 2026, like halfway through it, honestly, I reckon it's negligence if a company sells a chamber to a business that doesn't have bibs on it. So if you've already bought a chamber, if you didn't know any better or it wasn't available before, you get a hall pass. I think that's fair. And the thing is, if you can actually upgrade your chamber to have bibs later, so you've got like the Seacrest, you've got Perry, Oxy Health, for example. That's Health, Health, not HELP. Um, those companies actually do sell a version of their chamber and you can upgrade it to bibs. So I actually think that, you know, in time, everyone should try to change the system to adapt to bibs just because it's a lot more efficient, and it also keeps the oxygen levels in the room lower. So if you don't have bibs, you have to use a flow-through system. And if you've got a flow-through system, you're pumping oxygen into a mask, and then that's going to mix into the room around you. So 21% oxygen, plus you're adding in a little bit at 90 to 100% oxygen, eventually it starts to mix and the oxygen levels start to raise in the room. 23.5 is the cutoff. So normal air is 21%. 23.5, after that, it's classified as oxygen enriched. Okay. So if you hit 23.5, you're actually supposed to vent that air out of the building. So not out of the chamber, out of the building. Like you have to get a tube
Mhm.
going from your chamber outside, fucking that shit off. No one does that, right? Unless they've got a proper hospital setup, which only companies like, the three I mentioned earlier, they kind of do that stuff. So that's something interesting to note. Like you want to make sure you're doing everything as safe as possible. Because if you're pumping a whole bunch of oxygen enriched air into the building that you're in, potentially the room's oxygen levels can rise as well. So that's why they're like, kick it out of the building, it's a fire risk.
So let me ask this. Let me stop for just a second. So
Yeah.
I've seen the majority of the chambers that I've seen either discussed in the groups or advertised are either 1.5 ATA, soft or hard shell. And I know that there's more. I know there's chambers that are obviously higher ATA, but is there, what's your perception of the therapeutic value of 1.5? Because I know at a certain level, 1.5 or the ATA is considered maybe not a medical device, and at a different level, it's considered a medical device. And there's different like maybe rules and regulations around different ATAs. I mean, that's I think correct, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm just gonna pause my video and go look for part of my training document. So when I did a training course, it talked about different pressures and oxygen and the amount of oxygen saturation in tissue. So I'm just going to turn my video off. Where the hell am I? Here we are. So I did a training course with Jason Saunders of HBOT USA, and in the training manual he gave us, there's a table of the percentage of oxygen with hyperbaric. And so it's the percentage of oxygen, the total pressure, and then the capillary pressure. So like in millimeters of mercury, how much oxygen is actually in your capillary. So I can see it's a bit creepy
Okay.
with the eyes on top. So can you see that? Maybe
Yep.
screenshot it as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so on air at sea level, it's 50. Okay. On oxygen at sea level, it's 75. So you've only got 50% more there. On oxygen at 1.3, so 3 meters underwater or 100 feet the seawater. Um, you're at 250 almost. So it's a bit of a jump. So barely going underwater, but you're actually on oxygen. It's gone from 75 to 250. That's a lot more oxygen with a tiny dip underwater. And then you go to 1.5 ATA, that's almost double that number because you're multiplying by the pressure. So you're getting a shit ton more oxygen into the tissue. Some people are like, do you need the oxygen? The answer is we don't know. Traditionally, like hyperbarics were started in the 1600s, and they only worked with compressed air. Later on, they started to isolate oxygen, and that's when they started using oxygen in hyperbarics. But previously, it was all just with air only. So um, that's yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Um, Pressure wise, you've got the 1.3, 1.35, 1.5, 2, then you've got above 2, right? I would love for someone to show me where in the legislation it says that you can't do higher pressures. That's always a fun question because like in Australia, we don't have anything discriminating between 1.3 and 3 atmospheres, right? And just for context, 3 ATA, so that's 2 bar. That's actually pretty much the maximum human tolerance on oxygen. As you go beyond 3 ATA with oxygen, the risk of seizures is just astronomical. So no one treats at that level. Even if you have like carbon monoxide poisoning or something like that, they'll be doing 2.8 ATA, maybe 2.5 in some situations. So, no one's going to 3 anymore. But if you have a chamber that can go to 3, then, you're able to do everything before it as well. So
Sure.
I do like having a chamber that's capable of doing more pressure than you actually need, because then it's definitely safe for what you're doing, right? A
So
lot of
as far as as far as you know, there really aren't in. I mean, I guess you're familiar enough with what's going on in the United States, but as far as you know, there's really no distinction from a regulatory standpoint or state, even state or local government that distinguishes 1.5 ATA versus 2.22 ATA. And really, the only difference between those two is you're getting more concentration of oxygen into your blood. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't seen any legislation saying that you can or can't do anything higher, you know. And even a lot of the times, a lot of the best practitioners doing hyperbarics are actually chiropractors. You know, chiropractors, osteos, physical therapists. They're non-medicos, and they're doing a lot of great work. So it's very fascinating to see that. You know, usually they end up hiring nurses later on. And I think actually I'll write that down as something to talk about. But yeah, so for the moment, ideally you have nurses running the clinic, but you don't really have to. It's kind of in a gray zone right now. The whole industry hasn't been regulated yet. It's kind of where peptides was 6 months ago, right? So I remember hearing your other talk with that lawyer. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I had two different discussions, one with a male lawyer, one with a female lawyer about peptides.
The male lawyer. And he was talking about how in the whole wellness industry, what happens is, you know, people start to adopt it. You got the early adopters. I should do this hand, sorry, early adopters, and then you hit, you know, the majority, and it's like, and then regulation comes in. Then you get a massive contraction, and then a lot of times people just forget about the wellness technology. You know, it happened with cryotherapy, happened with float tanks, happens with everyone. And so it's fascinating that the peptide movement is moving a lot faster, and I presume that's because of the barrier to entry. So anyone can set up an affiliate link. Anyone can become an expert on peptides just by talking about it online. So I feel like peptides are moving a lot faster than everything else, but hyperbaric's on the same trajectory. So we currently aren't massively regulated yet, but it's coming, right? All we really need is for one non-FDA approved chamber to explode. That's all we need. Once that happens, probably the whole industry will go into shambles, you know, and then it will be like, okay, now we have to set a whole bunch of strict rules. Who's doing shit properly? Who's not? Who's got real chambers? Who's just bought the cheapest thing from China? And you know, and it will start to go in that direction. Um, China's doing some cool stuff. They're just not there yet. But back to the pressure thing, I can't see anything saying that you can or can't do certain pressures. I would err on the side of caution. Anything above 2 ATA, the risk of oxygen toxicity, so seizures, that increases a lot. So, you know, you want to be a lot more present. One of the things is if you're doing this treatment, you have to be there at all times. I can send you a video later of a soft shell exploding, and it took 8 seconds for the staff member to appear. You know, 8 seconds after you hear this massive explosion. Like when you hear the explosion, I guess maybe they would have panicked for 3 seconds, but like they should have been there straight away. Um,
Was the patient or was the client injured when that happened?
I don't have the whole story. I just have the
Okay.
video.
Okay. All
It's like
right.
boom, and then it's like, what the fuck? And you hear people talking, and you realize there is someone in the chamber. But it's yeah, it's
Well,
pretty.
I think you also sent me a news story about a hard shell that had broken open or it kind of somewhat exploded to a degree. I don't know if the glass cracked or something, but I remember a hard shell hyperbaric that had a problem.
Yeah, so there's two. The one with the glass everywhere you're talking about, that one. I just gotta be careful about what I say and how I say it. So a distributor mustn't have done the due diligence on their manufacturer or something. Square chambers are very difficult to engineer. Okay, square chambers, because pressure pushes out indiscriminately, it pushes in all directions. If you have a square, they cop it at the corners, right? And so I think it's like 3 times the amount of pressure hits the corner
Hmm.
as opposed to anywhere else. And so if you look at like a proper hospital square chamber, they've got reinforcement like every 15, 20 centimeters. Like it's intense, you know. So that's why these massive hospital chambers that are square shape are way more expensive than a round one. Round ones don't have as much room because you lose the curves and the corners,
Hmm.
but they don't have the reinforcement. They've literally got one seam down the middle, whereas
Hmm.
the square ones are just like bang, 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 bang. Uh, so this chamber, it was square. They had a square door on it, and the square door was made of probably safety glass. I don't know what material it was. It definitely wasn't acrylic. So when you have a chamber, the door has to be acrylic if it's not metal. Sorry, any like portholes or anything where you can see outside, like a window, has to be made of acrylic, cannot be polycarbonate, cannot be glass. Okay. Polycarbonate is harder than acrylic, but if you just go on AI, just be like, hey, can you use polycarbonate for PPHO, or is that not allowed? And it's like you have to use acrylic because it's easier to see through it. It's more like glass, but it's still plastic and it deforms before it fails. Whereas
Mm.
polycarbonate, it can shatter. Like, because it's so hard, once it finally gives, it's gone. And it's easier to scratch it, and it's just not good. So that door, safety glass, square shape, the corners get more pressure. It just gave out. The door handle was like 15 meters away. Like if you look at I'm not going to share around that video, but if you look at the video, it's gone so far away, and it's like, someone was in the chamber when that exploded. There's still glass all through the chamber. There's glass all out in the room outside it. It's insane, and it's like, how did this happen? You know, it it should never have happened. That's why anytime I see a lot of these chambers online, I'm like, people have no idea what they're buying. I've got other photos I think I sent you where it's got the welding on the metal. Have I sent you those?
Hmm. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they were consistently bad. And these things happen in the background. You can't see it unless you take the shell off. So it's like you just want to be really careful about who you're buying from because some people just don't care. They just want money.
So do you feel like there's any notable or recognizable therapeutic benefit to a a 2 ATA versus a 1.5 ATA? So I mean, I guess for those people who are considering buying a hyperbaric chamber, and they're obviously going to be getting sales pitches from a lot of different businesses that are offering it different ATAs. What would you like? What's your philosophy with that? I mean, I kind of got part of it, which is it's always nicer to be able to go up a little bit. But do you know any therapeutic benefits that are better over 2 ATA over 1.5?
Yeah, look, this is a massive point of contention. So a lot of people will argue a lot of crazy things, okay? More pressure means more oxygen. More oxygen may or may not be better, right? You've got people who are saying 1.3 is exactly the same as 2.4. That person is smoking crack. I told you the maths before of the oxygen in your tissues. So the thing is, like I said, I like having the flexibility to go from a lower pressure to a higher pressure. There's a bit of research coming around where people are saying that low moderate pressures are better than higher pressures for certain things. So for central nervous system issues like the brain, lower pressure seems to be better than a higher pressure. Um, there's a lot of nuances though. You know what I mean? So you've got people like Shia Frati in Israel, where he goes from air, oxygen. It keeps flicking between them. And he does a course over 3 months where you're going in 5 days a week. Once you finish those um, 3 months of treatment, your body actually thinks it's always hypoxic. So when you're in the chamber and you're breathing pure oxygen, it gets used to it. And then it's like, oh, this is my new normal. And then when you give it back to air, it starts to freak out and release all these healing cascades like HIF1 alpha, which stands for hypoxic inducible factor, 1 alpha. So you've got all this cool stuff happening when you're hypoxic, but you're actually not hypoxic and getting the same benefit. So it's interesting. I think even though 1.3 in the short term might be more effective at certain things, or 1.5 might be more effective at certain things, I think trending more towards the stuff Shia Friday doing is probably beneficial. I'm sure there's a middle ground. I like using 1.75 ATA for neurological conditions, but I've got other specialists telling me do 1.5 or 1.3. And at the end of the day, I'm working with the client. We're going off what we've seen before, but also what their specialist wants to do. So if they've worked with insert any hyperbaric specialist and he says, I want them doing 10 sessions at 1.5, I'm doing 10 sessions at 1.5. I'm not going to go off and go, no, no, I want to do this. No, I'm here to work with the team, and I don't know everything, but that's why we try to work together where we can. Did that sort
So
of roundabout thing?
yeah, no. So I mean, I guess so. Is your general recommendation for people that are just now exploring it? Do you feel like they would address the majority of their requirements with a 1.5 and they would be fine for some period of time until maybe they built the practice and realized like how popular it is for them in their community, and then they might want to upgrade to something different? Or because people have to figure out their budget and therapeutic value and their goals, and they got to blend them all, but to try to make a buying decision.
That's really difficult. I used to tell people, get whatever you can afford, right? And if it's for home, get whatever you can afford. That's fine. When it comes to a business, a lot of factors come into play, and things are starting to scare me a bit more now. So, because of those two explosions in the last 12 months in America, the whole industry is slowly starting to um, just dial in a little bit more. And PVHO is going to be the minimum standard. I can tell you that right now. FDA is the gold standard. Okay. These are certifications. PVHO stands for pressure vessel for human occupancy. You should not be getting in a chamber unless it has PVHO. The problem is there's not many companies with PVHO. And here you go, ready? None of the Chinese chambers have it. So yeah, sure, they're cheaper, but if you get in a chamber, so if you get a client in a chamber and it's not PVHO certified, and you hurt their ears because you pressurize too fast, they could sue you and be like, "Oh, you hurt my ears," and you don't have a leg to stand on because you can't prove that your chamber was safe. Oh, I've got CE certification, I've got this and that. Yeah, that's great. Guess what? In America, you guys wrote the fucking standard for safety. So the people who wrote PVHO is called ASME. That's the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They literally wrote the fucking standard. And if you don't have PVHO, you shouldn't be putting someone in it, right? So,
Do the soft shell, the ones that I see most often are the lay down single person soft shell chambers that are either 1.3 or 1.5 ATA. So are those PVHO?
only Oxy Health.
Okay.
So once again, that's Oxyhealth. Like I'm in
Mhm.
good health. Okay.
Sure.
So I got a bit of a list because my face is numb. I had a root canal
Okay.
and it damaged the nerve. So I'm like,
Oxy Health, got
yeah,
it.
yeah. Not to be confused with Oxy Help. Okay.
Okay.
I used to work for Oxy Help. I really don't like them anymore because they don't care about PBHO. They don't care about BIBs. And so that's why I've stepped away from them. So I don't have anything nice to say about them. I'm not going to say anything else. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, Oxy Health, they're the only company that has a 1.3 ATA soft shell that's air only. And so they've got FDA approval for that, and the FDA approval is for altitude sickness. To my knowledge, there's no 1.5 ATA soft shells, and there's no soft shells that have oxygen that are FDA approved. There might be other brands, I don't know, because I don't care about soft shells. I'm not going to
Right.
lie. Because if you're going to a clinic, I really think you should look down the route of getting a high-end premium medical chamber. Because with that chamber, you can charge more. Okay. You
And what
can't.
designates a medical chamber? Does that mean it's a hard shell and it goes to a specific ATA? Or like when you say medical, how would you define that?
Sorry, I say that because it's just easy terminology for other people. But at the end of the day, every chamber should be medical, right?
Okay.
Um, at least two ATA, at least, right? Ideally having BIBs. That's what I think you should look at. With PVHO certification. Optimally, if you can get FDA, great. The problem with the FDA chambers is they're bloody ugly, um, and they're more expensive as well. But there's a reason for that. They've done all the certifications. That comes at a price. The company has to pay that. So, you're paying for that peace of mind. Um, so that's what I recommend. The reason I recommend going towards these higher end chambers is because you can actually charge what you're worth. One of the biggest problems with hyperbarics is every man and his dog is buying a cheap, shitty chamber. They put people in, press play, walk off, and don't even think about it. The most dangerous part of a dive is the beginning pressurizing phase. Okay. You have to be there 100% of the time while they're pressurizing. You also have to be there 100% of the time while they're depressurizing. The middle, you should be there the whole time, but the risk of anything happening in that period is very low. And so let's just assume you have a nurse sitting there watching the whole session, and let's just assume it takes 2 hours. What's a nurse's wage, right?
It can vary quite a bit, but I mean, I heard kind of maybe average, maybe 50, it depends on the nurse, but maybe $50 an hour.
All right, so if you have someone in your chamber and they have to sit there for 2 hours, what do you have to charge so that you can turn a dollar, right? It's impossible to do if you don't have a proper chamber. Because if you have a soft shell, someone's like, I want to pay $50 for a session. And maybe you have so much competition around because the chambers are so cheap, you actually have to charge that. And so once you start charging a low price because it's a commodity, what happens? Your service drops. What happens when your service drops? You're increasing risk and it's just not worth it. So that's why I say it's always worthwhile looking at proper chambers because, you can charge anywhere, it depends on where you are in the world, but like 150 to 400, $500
for a
to remember
session?
per session.
And
And
how long are sessions? Are they generally an hour?
it depends on your protocol. It
Okay.
could be 60, 90, or 120 minutes, plus half an hour turnaround time. Shai Afrati, the Israeli guy, his protocol used to be 90 minutes. Now it's 2 hours. So Shai Afrati, he's actually set up clinics in America now. If you go to see him, 60 sessions of hyperbaric is 70,000 US dollars, thereabouts. So he's charging over $1,000 US per session. Yes, he's doing some testing. Yes, he's going to give you some other treatment as well, which is like trauma therapy or whatever if you need it. But the crux of his protocol is 60 sessions of hyperbaric over 3 months.
And who's a good candidate for doing hyperbaric? On the business side of it, what things are people dealing with that hyperbaric could help them with? And then, generally speaking, after how many sessions would people recognize that they actually feel better?
Hyperbaric is going to support the body. I'll explain a couple of mechanisms of action in a second. That will explain why it's for almost everybody. If your body is like a bucket, okay? You're a little bucket and you collect poisons from food, your environment, everything, right? And at the bottom, there's a little drain pipe. If the drain pipe is smaller than the amount of shit you're throwing in, it can't handle it all. You build up a certain level of poison. If we heal you, right, but this bucket of poison is still in the background, depending on how full that bucket is, will depend on how quickly you get sick again, right? In this case, it's like, well, how many sessions do they feel it? Well, if we're fighting against this in the background, this massive bucket of poison, it's going to be a lot harder for us to move the needle compared to if you come in with an almost empty bucket. Okay. The reason I use this analogy is because cancer. A lot of people come in for cancer for hyperbarics, and cancer is massively on the rise. I've got them to NED, so no evidence of disease. After they stopped treatment, they went off, had a very stressful 3 months, came back, and they were basically dead a month later. Right? We couldn't save them at that point because they were so far gone. The reason they were that far gone was because of the stress, but we couldn't do anything about that. That was very unfortunate. Some people feel hyperbaric from one session. Most people go home, have the best sleep of their life, and then, if they're anemic, they instantly get energy. Some people, the hyperbaric gives them energy and they use that energy to heal, and then they get tired. Some people get dehydrated. Some, you know what I mean? So it's like, what's your experience going to be like? We don't know until you do it, right? And so, who is hyperbarics for? Well, let's just look at some of the mechanisms of action. It's a whole body stem cell therapy. Stem cells are good for everything. It increases angiogenesis, so you grow new blood vessels. Increases neurogenesis, so you grow new nerve tissue, including brain tissue. Increased osteogenesis, so you're growing new bone. Increased collagen formation. It also drops inflammation. So that's just some of the things it does, okay? Can you see why it helps almost everything?
Sure. Yeah.
Which is really annoying because when someone says, "Oh, well, what can't it do?" and you're like, "Oh, God, it helps almost everyone," and then you sound like you're a crackhead or you're just like a salesperson. But it actually can help a lot of people. However, it may not be the lowest hanging fruit. The amount of time and money needed invested in this from the client means it's not a very easy thing to do for most people. If I tell you the standard protocol is 5 days a week, 2 hours a day for 2 months, you're not, you're like, who the fuck has time for that? Right? So,
Very sick people who are looking for a solution or a potential solution, right? They've exhausted other options and now we see that actually on a regular basis for some of our wellness modalities, right? I like to call them optimizers, but a lot of times we see people who have exhausted all of their other options, they exhausted their conversations with their medical providers, and then they come and they try some of the modalities that we have there, like compression or red light or cryotherapy. So I feel like hyperbaric is kind of in that bucket too, although it potentially has, if you are one of few in your community that has a medical grade or a quality hyperbaric, then you potentially could get referral business from medical professionals, from hospitals, and things along those lines.
yeah, some of them, not many. Yeah, a lot of people, it's a really weird world. unless someone really believes in it and they like you as well, they're not going to send you anyone, right? So there's certain demographics we can talk about another time. Um, yeah, there's a lot of professionals who will not send you anyone.
Sure.
It's absolutely wild, and there's a lot of factors as well. I um I have to shake my head. Near me, my friend, she sends me clients because she's like one of my booking agents. She used to work with these plastic surgeons. She told them that we have a better chamber than everyone, and yet he'll still send people to someone else because it's closer. Because he's like, oh, well, you're not in a rich area, so I can't send you clients. It's like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, seriously, we're going to heal your clients faster. You're going to get better results, but you're still going to send them somewhere else because they're closer. So you have that. Then you have other medical professions who, I spoke to one doctor and I told him I did cryo and a bunch of stuff, and he goes, "There's no research for any of the stuff you're doing." I'm like, "I just told you I got medical hyperbaric chamber." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, a lot of these professionals are not professional. Like they need a slap. Seriously, they just need to be woken up because they're missing the boat. They're being left in the dark ages, and I can't wait for AI to take their jobs because they're just dumb.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that. The things that we do in general, sometimes traditional Western medicine doesn't, since they weren't trained on it, they don't see that the potential benefit. We're starting to see that change a little bit, but I definitely get what you're saying is like, don't bank on getting a bunch of referrals from the Western medical community, hospitals and doctors and things like that. You need to essentially kind of build your own business around that particular modality.
Yeah, and back to a treatment protocol, it could be 5 sessions if it's acute. It could be 80 sessions or more if it's chronic. And so it just has to be factored in that there's a lot of layers to everything. And this is actually why I like the multi-seaters. If I have a four-seater, or a two-seater actually would be better, just for the experience. If one person is rich and he's paying for a session, that covers my costs. With that secondary seat, I can actually treat really poor, really sick people for free because I don't care. I've already made my money. If I have two people getting in my chamber that are paying me full price, amazing. I'm getting paid. I love it. But it's not all about money. You need money. You need to be able to have a profitable business. And that's why I don't want to touch the soft shells ever. However, there is a time and a place. If you live in the middle of nowhere and you're not sure if it's going to work, I understand if you start with a soft shell and then later on move to a hard shell. It's just with what's happening at the moment, I'm very reluctant to say to do that, unless you have a backyard clinic where you're basically running out of your backyard for your friends. That's different. If you're a full-fledged clinic, I wouldn't touch anything that's not at least PVHO certified. It's just
Right.
I don't think it's worth the risk anymore. A year ago, absolutely it was. Even a couple of months ago. But yeah, I really don't think it's worth it now.
So, like when I was asking you for some, pricing, some pricing information, just to get a sense of what something like this would cost to get installed, it reminded me of maybe earlier electric chambers. Now, prices for electric chambers are starting to come down, which we kind of predicted a few years ago, but which is great because the technology is getting better. But like hyperbaric, a good quality PVHO certified hard shell chamber or even soft shell if there is one. Um, the prices can be quite expensive, and so it reminds me a little bit about early electric chambers because they're very expensive, and your time to recoup your investment in it could be quite a long period of time unless you find a good way to monetize that, like charge the premium prices and build that clientele. And I don't know how easy or hard, I don't know if that's easy or hard. I guess it depends on, your practice, where you're located, what's your demographic, what's the average median income, and what the need, what it looks like the need is in your community. So I think there's a lot of factors that boil down there, but it definitely does seem to me that it could be potentially take a longer time to pay back a hyperbaric based on a lot of those factors. I mean, you probably, if you have a good quality chamber, you can probably charge more money, but then your challenge is being able to find your market in your community.
Yeah, I used to think a lot like you're saying right now, and then the more I'm in the space, the more I'm like it doesn't really matter. You're gonna have people coming no matter what. I had a lady coming from 2 hours away. So she would literally every day take 2 hours each direction plus a 2 hour treatment. So 6 hours of a day was dedicated to coming to see me every day.
And what was she coming for? Because did she have cancer? Did she have a bad illness? What did she have? Because obviously that's a lot of motivation to spend 6 hours of your day and then whatever your service fee was for that
Yeah, stroke.
stroke.
Yeah. So, a lot of when you start looking into hyperbarics, certain conditions will pop out to you straight away that you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then when you run a clinic, you sort of see certain demographics coming in. You can do it for health optimization. You can do it for the rich biohackers and whatever else. The reality is you're probably going to have to deal with 70, maybe 80% of your clients are chronically unhealthy, chronically sick. It's a really sad stat, but at the same time, at least you're doing something good for them. There's a study where it was a case study. 15 years after a stroke, the person got benefits and movement back in their limbs more than before. 15 years after their stroke. Get fucked. Like, why didn't they do it in the first year? It's because it's not standard of care. Okay. Well, more people are learning about it now. And so you're getting people much earlier on in the journey. Um, just to put things in perspective for you, Australia has 6 indications that our Medicare, which is like your insurance, our Medicare covers 6 conditions. America has 15. Russia, China, and a bunch of other countries, there's up to 70 different conditions. So,
So that's interesting. So you're saying that there are, you said 15 or 16 medical conditions that insurances cover hyperbaric?
yep,
So if you're going to offer hyperbaric, then ideally you want to be set up to accept insurance.
you could do that, but most people go for out of pocket. Out of
Oh,
pocket
really?
is a much, much easier thing. Even though you're like, well, insurance is going to, foot the bill and take the weight off. Usually insurance aren't as helpful as, just getting it done. And so people find they just go in, they pay the cash, it's done. See you later. Uh,
Do you know of any circumstances or situations where somebody comes in, pays out of pocket, and then goes to their insurance company and looks for reimbursement?
no, I avoid the insurance side because I know the insurance side can be very dirty. There's My friend was telling me about someone, I don't know if it's real or not, or if it's hyperbaric or a different industry, but this clinic was set up for insurance, client billed insurance, they got paid, and then the insurance company did an inspection later on, and then like I can't remember the reason, something was not perfect. They didn't dot the I's, cross the T's, and they go, we want you to pay us back for the
Yeah.
insurance
I mean,
reimbursement.
I have actually heard of various stories about insurance companies doing that to clinics that are accepting insurance and like looking for money back for different reasons. So I've definitely heard that. I don't remember the use cases for them, but I actually have heard that exact thing before. So mostly I was more curious about not that the practice needs to deal with insurance itself. It's like the client comes in, uses the hyperbaric, pays the clinic the money, gets the receipt, and then goes and deals directly with their insurance company to see if they can get reimbursed. Because I know, especially here in the United States, that does happen in some cases. I'm just not sure if that, I'm not sure exactly how that all works, to be honest.
If you wanted to bill for insurance, you would need an FDA approved chamber, and you'd
Hmm.
probably need a facility that's set up and approved for insurance billing. So whatever that means, I'm not quite sure. Things like piping, copper piping, you'd probably need to be running bottled oxygen, maybe. I don't actually know. I think maybe even Bill might, Bill Human.
I don't know. I don't think I know him.
I think it's Bill Hanks in our group. We could probably ask him. I think he's set up for insurance, so he might actually know a bit more about it.
Oh, does he have hyperbaric?
Yes. Yeah, he's got Oxy Health. So he's
Okay.
got FDA approved chambers. You know, he doesn't have bibs on his chambers yet, but we're talking about it and he's like, well, if he can get it, he's going to get it later on. He's going to upgrade his chambers. Because it's funny, one of the chambers that exploded wasn't Oxy Health. And the reason for that was it's an air-filled chamber and then they're bringing in the oxygen through the mask. So remember before I said the oxygen levels can raise? The the owner of the clinic was in the chamber and he brought in a battery powered red light device. This is the speculation, the only thing that makes sense because that's just how he treats anyway. And if you know anything about batteries, a hot battery can potentiate into a fire, right? When you're adding pressure and changing the pressure, that can also damage the battery and lead to the battery expanding, which can also lead to fires as well. So he's using a red light panel, it's got a massive draw, it's getting hot, it would have led to a fire. That is the only logical thing we can think of as an outsider. I haven't seen the official reports, but that's just one of the things he does in his clinic. Red light
I,
should
s-
not be
I- sorry, go ahead.
red light should not be in a hyperbaric chamber. Any manufacturer putting red light in a chamber is an idiot, in my opinion. I think do it before, do it after, sure, but don't do it in there unless you've got like a low powered hardwired device. But like just do it before or after. Like what the hell? It's not that hard to do.
So I saw a Brian Johnson special where I saw YouTube where he did hyperbaric for, I don't know if it was
60 sessions.
was it several months that he did it over? And
He
then
did the
I
Israeli
remember
protocol.
seeing him using a computer inside of the hyperbaric. Is that not, that's that not good?
Yeah.
I mean, using electronics in hyperbaric doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but I don't know. So I'm curious what your perspective is on that.
So let's just start with I have a love-hate relationship with Brian Johnson. Okay. He does a lot of good stuff and he's bringing a lot of attention to like the industry and he's very polarizing, which is really good because that gets eyes and it gets clicks. And so he's doing some great stuff. It's funny because the protocol he did is the Shia Frati or the Israeli protocol I was talking about earlier. So he did that protocol, and now everyone I speak to is saying, I want to do the Brian Johnson protocol. And I'm like, sure. Just so you know, it's from these guys first. They did the research. He's just copying along. Um, but he actually has the chamber that I have, like the same brand. Now, it's got bibs, great. So the oxygen concentration in the room isn't going to go up. So it's going to be at
This is
21%.
going directly to the person, to the bibs.
Yeah, the oxygen goes straight to the mask, to the person. So the oxygen level in the chamber isn't the risk here. However, it's still a change in pressure. Now, if you do a little bit of research, you'll find that airplanes now are banning battery packs. So they're like, you can't bring portable battery chargers on planes, and if you do, it has to be on you at all times. You can't put it in the overhead cabin because a lot of them have been setting on fire recently. Phones are the number one offender after laptops. I do not like laptops at all in a chamber. People are going to say, oh, but I've been using my chamber and my laptop and phone for 5 years. I've had no issues. That's great. You're fucking lucky. It's not guaranteed that something's going to happen. However, if something happens, you're fucked. You're in a fucking chamber and you can't get out until you depressurize. You got nowhere to run if there's a fire. You don't want one happening. That's why when there's a fire in a chamber, it's catastrophic. The absolute risk of a fire happening, it's almost zero, right? But if it happens, you don't want to be the one it happens to. And so
Right.
I say absolutely no to phones and laptops. I think almost every single manual says don't bring electronic devices in a chamber. Like it's on the manual. I'm pretty sure for his chamber as well, in the manual it says do not bring in electronic devices. So just because someone on the internet did it doesn't mean you should do it. And it doesn't mean it's safe, right? I
Right.
really wouldn't risk it for most people.
Gotcha. So generally speaking, are you dealing with any installations of the hyperbaric in the United States? Like, are you dealing with any of that, or are your counterparts here in the United States that's actually doing that?
So there's two main installers in America. I'm good friends with the original guy. There's another guy who's doing more work at the moment. So I work directly with Ben. He's a legend. He's a veteran. He's a really good guy. So where I can, I work with him. I don't do a lot in America. I wouldn't mind doing more in America. It's just that time zone difference makes it hard for me. That's why
Hmm.
normally I just tell people to speak to Ben on my behalf because he's
So
he's a
these are installers of
yeah,
Hypotech hyperbaric in the United States that travel to okay, and you know
even
how
Hawaii.
many? What's that? Even
Even
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
How many hypotech chambers are installed in the United States, roughly?
Oh, I've got no idea. There's a lot.
A lot.
You know,
Okay.
because of Brian Johnson, like I said before, love-hate relationship. We've been at the Don't Die conferences, and so every time we do a Don't Die conference, everyone's like, "What are these beautiful chambers? Can I get one?" And absolutely, sure. So he's done a lot of good for us and for the industry. And I think that's one of the best things about the HBO tech or hypertech, whatever you want to pronounce it. They do make beautiful chambers, and they're actually the people who are shifting the industry. So before them, no one gave a flying fuck about bibs, and they're doing it. So now everyone's like, well, I want something that pretty and with bibs. And so China is copying them in so many ways. It's hilarious, but they still don't fucking do sprinklers. And so, we called up for fun. We just called up a competitor, like just my friend and I from nearby, and we're like, what am I actually up against? Do I have to like surrender or is there still a place for us? And I'm like, all right, can you make me a chamber? They go, sure. Can you get sprinklers? No. All right, great. Well, can I get at least what kind of door do you have? Oh, we got polycarbonate. Okay, can I get an acrylic door? Can you just change it? No. Why not? Oh, we don't do that. Polycarbonate's better. I'm like, sure, guys, no worries. So
Right.
like I said before, you can't get PVHO, and you can't like pass NFPA if you don't have sprinklers in a multi-seater. So if it's a two-seater, if you don't have a sprinkler, you're fucked. Your fire department can shut you down, right? If they look into the legislation, and if they do a proper inspection, they will, and then you will be shut down. So I wouldn't touch a multi-seater unless it has sprinklers. That's number one. Um, and yeah, acrylic doors is really important. It's actually
Do
pretty.
do all do all PVHO chambers
Yeah.
have sprinklers in them?
Only multi-seaters.
Multi-seaters. So single seaters don't have to have them in there?
Not in America. In Australia, you're supposed to have it.
Okay.
So yeah, our standards are different to yours in that regard, because Australia likes to make things more difficult. Um, but it's one of those things that just has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick thing you were mentioning before about paying off the equipment.
Uh,
So the difference between the hyperbaric industry and cryo is how often can you do cryo a week?
you could do it every single day if you like.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you'll get burnt out and get over it within like 3 weeks, right? Like if you do it every day, you're going to be like, I'm not really feeling any different now, and you'll stop doing it after a while. The thing with hyperbarics is the research suggests, you have to do 20, 40, 60, 80 sessions, whatever it is, until you've healed your wound. And so once you get someone in, they have to come minimum 3 days a week, but the hospital treat 5 days. So if you go to a hospital, if you can't come 5 days a week, they kick you out of the program. They're like, see you later. Don't waste our time. So because of that, let's just say the average person does 40 sessions. What's 40 times 150 as like a worst case scenario? It's $6,000 just from one person. They're coming every single day, right? You don't need very many people to book out for the whole day. So once you've got these people in, it's like, can you get one new client every 2 months? Yeah, that's not very hard, right? If you're out constantly trying to find someone who's going to pay you $50 for a cryo session, it's a very different money model, right? But this is a high ticket product. So that's why it's a very different. Yes, you might pay a lot for a good piece of equipment, but you'll pay it off a lot faster than something else where you're trying to get unlimited sessions for 150 a week. That's what we charge in one session as a minimum.
Yeah. So I get that. I think so for anyone who's still watching, because I think we're coming up for about an hour, maybe a little longer,
Okay.
but
Sorry.
no, that's okay. I hope people find this helpful. I mean, this is actually helpful for my purposes because I'm going to send this video to the gal who's interested just to see
Yeah.
what she thinks. But I think the key thing is it is a high ticket item. It should be a high ticket item, and you shouldn't kind of devalue it. And then your focus really needs to be about how to acquire the clients that are going to be going to be willing to spend that money for this kind of therapy, right? And what strikes me as the most likely is people who've exhausted many other things. It depends on the market. Like in certain markets, there's people who are like wellness, aficionados and junkies and stuff like that. They probably would go drink the Kool-Aid and do it because they'll make a part of the routine. And on the other side of it, there's probably people who have exhausted everything else and they're now going to be willing to pay $150 a session for this because they're in a chronic situation with their health, right? So I
Mm.
think the big takeaway is figuring out how you want to position hyperbaric in your community, and then how to go out and find those people, to come in.
Yeah, pretty much. And the main thing, I have to say it at least once, if you're not in it to help people, you can fuck right off. Like, we don't need you in the industry, right? If you're just about money, people will sniff that and they won't come. They'll come for a little and they'll find somewhere else. It doesn't matter how good your equipment is and how nice your clinic is. If you're just about money, like people aren't going to want to have a bar of it. Or you might get them for a small period of time, and then later on they'll go somewhere else, or they'll never come back. You know, a lot of my guests, they come in and they're like, no, you actually care, you want to help us. And I'm honest with them. I'm like, I don't know what we can and can't do. This is what I have been suggested we should probably do, but I also want to work with your professionals. So like you're just trying to help people, you'll be fine. But if you're in it for money, yeah, fuck right off. I don't want to hear your name. Seriously. Yeah. And there's some other people where it's just like, don't, please don't. Like, you know what I mean? I've seen them, I've dealt with them in the past, and I was just like, I'm glad they didn't buy a chamber from me, because I'm like, I don't wish for people to go bankrupt and not do well, except some of those people. I'm like, you know what? The world would be better if you just don't do business in this field. Like, go do something else like marketing. Oh, not even marketing. Like, go somewhere else where, people don't care. But this stuff here, just stay away from the good helping.
And just a final question before we go. You gave me some pricing for like a two-seater, and that was roughly around 150, 160 installed. Is there a notable difference in price for a single seater? I mean, I know the opportunity is different between a dual seater and a single seater, but is there a big difference in price between a single seater and a dual seater?
I'd have to look at it later. I think it's like between 25 to 30% difference in price. So when you think about the economics of running a hyperbaric facility, one of my trainers, I listened to a video on him talking about it, and it was hilarious, and it made complete sense to me because I was like, I've been there. Uh, Once you have one chamber, so you get one seat normally with a chamber, within 6 to 12 months, you're running capacity, and you're like, holy shit, I need more seats so I can put people in. So a lot of people start off with a single seater. They get the single seater, they get full. 6 to 12 months later, they have to buy another chamber. When you buy two chambers, that's 200%, right?
Yeah.
If if you if you just spent a little bit more to get an additional seat in the beginning, it's only 25-30% more. You've got double the capacity. But
Yeah.
it's not just about double the capacity. You've actually doubled the opportunity as well. If you have a chamber where you can actually hop in with the client, you can sit with them and make sure their first session is beautiful, amazing, calm, everything just works, right? If something's just a little bit out, let me adjust your mask for you. If you have a single seater, just talking through the intercom, hey, Mike, can you move your mask a little bit to the left? Can you tighten it a bit more? Yeah. Is the air coming out near your eyes? Is it? There's just so many little things. It's just like if I was there, I would just yeah fix. Um, but it's not just about me getting in with them. It's also okay. You've had a stroke. You're struggling. Your caretaker can now jump in with you. You've just opened up a whole different market. You got an autistic kid, and the mum is really good at like calming them from stimming and everything else. The mum can go in with them. You've just opened up a completely different market that one seaters can't do. So it's not just about, okay, can I just get one seat and it's all going to be hunky dory? You're like, well, what makes the most sense? If I'm looking at this a long-term play, you want your chamber to last you 10, 20, 100 years, you're buying a high quality chamber. If you want just something to last you 1 to 2 years, please go to China, buy the cheapest chamber you want. Just know that you're leaving a lot on the table. But
Yeah.
definitely, I like the two-seater a lot more. Price difference is, I think, about 30%. I can't remember. I'd have to look at it later because I just got a new pricing update as well.
So sorry, I had one more question. Do you need to be have medical supervision in order to run a hyperbaric?
I don't believe so. But define medical supervision, right?
Yeah, so for example, to for peptides to patients or clients, you need to have a medical director. So you have to have medical oversight of some form, whether that's a medical director that's on site sometimes, or if it's a remote medical director. But it's usually somebody with a doctor degree of some form, whether it's MD, NP. I'm not sure if there's any specific requirements in different states for hyperbaric, but from your experience, I just wondered if you need to have that sort of medical supervision.
So, to my knowledge, no. In saying that, because the thing is, whenever someone says doctor, I'm always thinking like medical doctor, right? But the thing is, like I said before, most clinics are run by chiropractors, osteos, physical therapists. They're not doctors. They're doctor of, chiropractic.
Chiropractors might argue with you. They're doctors.
And can that chiropractor prescribe antibiotics,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not sure what they can or can't do, but
Yeah, right. So, like for me, whenever I hear the word doctor, I always think like medical doctor, white coat, prescribes drugs. That's the only thing they can do, right? Um, I don't, no, I don't think you need a doctor. Do you need a chiropractor or like, you know, whatever else? Probably, ideally, yes, or at least a nurse. But in saying that, it's still a gray area where the industry hasn't contracted yet. It's still kind of Wild West. You definitely do want to have someone trained. So HBOT USA does some trainings. That's who I did it with Jason Sonners. That's probably the easiest one to do it with because you're in America. He's right there. He does in-person 40-hour courses. It's like a 1 week course. Um, that'll get you, fuck, I have to look up the term later, BHT and CHT. It's like basic hyperbaric technician or certified hyperbaric technician. So depending on what qualification you have, depends on which course you can actually do. Um, but yeah, that I think for now, doing at least that course is enough to get you through. In the future, you're probably going to need nurses running the clinic, but that's not going to be for like 2, maybe 3 years, I reckon. Unless a chamber explodes before then it's going to come in within 6 months of that.
Well, I think it'll be interesting. So when I post this video to the groups, maybe multiple groups, we'll get some people who practitioners around the United States who have hyperbaric, and maybe they can even chime in on their own personal experience about running hyperbaric and what they can and can't do, and anything that they ran into with their like local government or city government or things like that.
Yeah, it's a lot harder because I'm back here in Australia, and then even here it's a Wild West. People are just doing things and do it first, ask for permission later. And then there's so many things along the way where you're like, oh, that's another thing you need to account for, and that too, like the sprinklers. I'd heard about it, but it wasn't available before, so I didn't get it. And then I'm like, no, I fucking need it. And then I looked again, and we started doing it. I was like, fuck, I, I wish I got the sprinkler earlier. So it's one of those things like a lot of information is being shared on this stuff. It still is a bit of a black box for a lot of people in regards to just what is and isn't applicable. Like the people saying 1.5 ATA air only is wellness. There's no fucking, it's not written anywhere. I've tried to find it. I couldn't find it. Above 2 ATA is medical. Since where? Since who? Like, tell me where it's fucking written so I can read it, and then I'll feel like an idiot for not finding it. But I think the main thing is if you are doing above 2, just know there's more risks. It's similar risks, but if you're monitoring the whole time and you know what to look for, there's going to be no problem. And also, like, fuck, I think the main issue with above 2 ATA is all this bullshit that people have been perpetuating. So if you do above 2 ATA, people will try to snitch on you and be like, oh, they're doing something medical. And it's like, yeah, what's the problem? Like, where is the actual problem? So I think that's where the biggest issue is there's so much perpetuated bullshit, which actually the 1.5 was from people who didn't have PBHO saying that so they could sell their chambers. That's where it started from. But it's like, fucking why? Now it's the whole industry's full of bullshit.
Right. Gotcha. Well, I appreciate your time on this. This is going to be really helpful. I know it's going to be helpful for the lady I'm going to send this to, and hopefully it'll be real helpful for the community that we post it to. And it'll be fun to see what kind of comments people have about our conversation, and maybe they'll, maybe some people with who are running hyperbaric can actually provide some insights into their experience. I think that would be great.
And I mean, we should probably put this at the beginning of the video. So if you snip this and put it at the beginning, I don't know everything. I know what I know, and like I'm trying to learn more. So if I'm wrong, I'm happy to accept that I'm wrong, and I'll adopt whatever makes sense. And also, here's a pre-warning: if you do snip this to the beginning, I swear a lot. So sorry in advance for anyone. Just warning you, I swear a lot.
Yeah, we should also warn people that this is going to be a relatively long discussion, but hopefully there people will be able to take some good nuggets out of it. I mean, it is my Sunday, so I got time, right? I'm not in any hurry.
I should probably start work soon. It's 10 a.m.
All
now.
right. Well, I'll let you get to your Monday, right? Your Monday.
Yeah.
All right. I'll let you get to your Monday. I appreciate your time.
All good, brother. Speak to
All
you
right.
soon.
See you later.
Bye.